So Congressman Moulton, thank you for coming back.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor. We saw you last in June of 2014. Lots has changed, but you're in the race again for president, and so we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, we're here. We wanted to ask you just a couple quick questions. So the first question I have for you is, why you to be president of the United States? And would you tell us what you really think is the most important part of your candidacy?
Sure. You know, there are a lot of great candidates in this race talking about a lot of different things. And this race is about a lot of different things. It's about healthcare, the economy, climate change. But most of all, it's about our values. It's about who we are as a country and restoring moral leadership to the White House. And in order to beat Donald Trump and win this election and bring the country together so that we can actually get something done, we need to find a leader who can build a diverse coalition of Americans across this country. Everybody in our party, we can't leave anybody out, but also independents, those Obama-Trump voters, and even some disaffected Republicans. Bring that coalition together to win this race and then unify the country to actually get the things done that we want to accomplish. I uniquely have that experience in this race because that was my job in the midst of a very divisive time, in the middle of the Iraq War, a war that I was an outspoken critic of. My job as an infantry platoon commander leading troops on the ground over 4 tours in Iraq was to bring together this remarkably diverse coalition and get them united behind a common mission to serve America. That's the kind of leadership we need from our nominee to beat Trump, and that's the kind of leadership we need for the next president of the United States to accomplish all the great things we want to do for this country.
One of the things we've found most just admirable about you as a person and your candidacy is your sense of service. And you have a service plan out for America. Would you mind talking a little bit about that, its components, and how it fits into your overall view?
Sure. Well, it's an ambitious plan. It's calling on all 33 million young Americans between the ages of 17 and 24 to consider serving their country. And the deal is that if you invest in America, we'll invest in you. So if you do 1, 2, or 3 years of service in a civilian service organization like the Peace Corps or City Year or a new federal Green Corps that I would inaugurate to help deal with climate change, we will invest in you. We will help pay for your education on a federal education model, guarantee modeled after the GI Bill. I was able to go to school after I got out of the Marines because of the GI Bill. And that's a promise that we should extend to every American who's willing to step up and serve the country.
Gentlemen?
Congressman, the current level of climate of politics, partisan, just politics. Can you talk a little bit about your ability to work across aisles and really work with the other party as well?
When I was a freshman Democrat, I got named the most effective freshman Democrat in Congress. But I was also one of the most bipartisan, and those two are related. Because we can pass a lot of great bills in the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives today, but they're just going to die in the Republican Senate if we can't get some Republicans on board. And so we've passed historic gun reform, historic legislation on climate change, historic legislation on getting money out of politics, but none of those things has become law, and so none of them are affecting anybody's lives. We've got to make sure that we actually get things done for the American people. So there are a couple ways to do that. One, you got to be able to work with Republicans who you can find common ground with, and I've often found that with veterans across the aisle. The second is that you've got to beat the Republicans you can't work with. And that's what we did over the last 2 years in the House by running a bunch of people, especially veterans, in key swing districts we needed to win back. I focused on this with my Serve America organization, which mentored, recruited, and supported candidates across the country. And of the 40 seats we flipped to take back the House, over half of them were candidates that I supported. I will take that model and apply it to the United States Senate. So if I'm the next president and we don't have control over the Senate, then I will take that model and make sure we win the Senate back. So it's both. You gotta find places where you can find common ground to actually get laws passed. But you also have to realize there are some Republicans, like Mitch McConnell, for example, that we just need to beat.
Congressman, just following up on your comment about Trump supporters and not looking to sort of preach to them morally, what will you say to them in terms of the things that they hold close to their hearts, in terms of what you can offer to address their concerns about jobs, about immigration? What will you actually say to those kind of voters?
Well, I'm not afraid to talk about moral leadership because I want to have moral leadership in the White House. And if there's one thing I learned from my time in the Marines, it's the importance of integrity. That's the lesson you learn on day one. That you can drop out of a run and they'll let you try again. You can fail a test and they'll let you retake the test. But if you lie about anything, you're gone that afternoon. But what we can't do is lord this morality over all the truck voters, sort of go on some moral crusade. Because you know what? They're not stupid. They know what this guy is all about. They know he's a bad guy. But they just said, I get the fact that he's an embarrassment. I'm voting for him anyway because I like this policy or that policy. So to beat him, to win these voters back, we've got to talk about where he's let us down, where he's failed to live up to his promises. He promised to take care of the middle class, but his tax cut primarily benefits big corporations and the wealthy. And that's the only part of it that's even permanent. The middle class part expires. He talked about making the most beautiful healthcare system America has ever seen. And yet he's worked tirelessly with his Republican colleagues to take Americans off of healthcare, to take healthcare away from people who have pre-existing conditions. We've got to remind Americans that we can do better. And on big issues like keeping America safe and strong, which is the fundamental responsibility of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, he's failed miserably. It's one of the reasons in this campaign that I'm taking him on as Commander-in-Chief, willing to challenge him on his record with Putin, with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, with Iran and the way that he's bringing us close to war. So we have got to remind Americans that Trump simply hasn't lived up to his promises. And we as Democrats can do better. We can have true tax reform that is fair for all. We can stand up to the threats of North Korea and Russia the way that Democratic and Republican presidents throughout history, until Donald Trump, have been willing to do. We can prevent war with Iran while also holding them accountable for their nuclear program and for the ways that they endanger our allies in the Middle East. We can do all these good things, and Trump has failed.
Thank you for coming, Congressman.
Thank you.
I'm probably the person of the group that leans a little bit on the other side of the aisle compared to everyone else. So some of what you say is I'm not necessarily. I hope you don't succeed in some aspects of your agenda, but in general, I think the one thing that we've all talked about is it's important that people run, and that when they win in a way that allows them to govern effectively.
Yes.
And you talked a bit about that. And I think there are plenty of issues that some of us would disagree on to the death, but others that just seem common sense. And you touched on one of them, which was really privacy, big data, these decisions being made with tech. And I have to say, I have friends on the left and the right that are, it's a huge issue, and you're the first person that I've actually heard say something about it. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
It is a huge issue. And there's two big issues there are a lot of issues with tech, but there are two big issues. One is that these companies are getting so big and having so much control, they're total monopolies. And we've got to find a way to regulate their size. But doing what some people have proposed, like just literally breaking them all up, that's just going to open us to more competition from China. This is a global economy. And some of the biggest social media companies are now in China, not just here in America. So we have to regulate them responsibly. As an example, I would make Facebook divest of WhatsApp and Instagram, but I wouldn't break up the entire company. I think they should not have been allowed to make those acquisitions. Now, the second portion of this is on regulation when it comes to the things that are posted on social media and how our data is used. And the thing is, all these decisions right now are made by a bunch of people sitting in the back room at Facebook, and then a different group makes them at Google, and a different group at LinkedIn, and there's no accountability whatsoever. Well, this is the kind of thing that the United States government should take on and say it's elected officials who you can vote out of office if you disagree with them who are going to make these regulations. And then everybody has to follow the same set of rules. That's what we need to do, and we need to have the courage in Congress to take it on. But I also think it's going to take a new generation of leadership to do so, because we saw, like, the Senate doesn't even understand Facebook right now. They don't get it.
I'm at that funny age where even I start to think about, like, what don't
Hey, we can all use help with our kids, right?
No,
But that's why it's time for a new generation of leadership in Washington, and that's why I've been fighting for that since my very first campaign.
Last question. Your life and has been spoken eloquently about the importance of character and mentoring others. And you talk a lot about Reverend Gomes and others in your life. Would you talk about the importance of character and the importance of helping other people as they grow and navigate life?
You know, it's something that's always been core to me and who I am, but especially since spending time with Reverend Gomes in Memorial Church. And his message was simple, that no matter who you are, you can be great by serving others. The same message of Martin Luther King and many other great leaders throughout history who have inspired people, especially Americans, to meet the greatest challenges that we face by stepping up and serving the country, serving others. That's how we pulled out of the Great Depression. That's how we won World War II. That's how we tackled the civil rights movement. Not just a few leaders in Washington, but everybody who volunteered to march and be a part of that change. That's how we passed Medicare and Medicaid, and that's how we will meet the challenges of the new future before us. It's through service. So I want Americans to serve. And I'm not just going to promise them a whole bunch of free stuff. I'm going to ask them to be a part of making the change that we need in this country. Believe in America so much that you're willing to step up and serve.
Thank you, sir. Great to see you. Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.